words of my mouth and the meditations from my heart be acceptable to you, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. I want to start today with thinking about the curse that happened long ago in the garden, the beginning of time, when Adam and Eve were in this position of being able to eat from any tree in the garden except for one. And of course, that's the one that was the most interesting then, the one you can't have. So you know the story about the fall, what's theologically called when humanity, not just the human race, but the universe itself, cracked. It has a flaw in it and has been in the process of been wearing out ever since. It's like the second law of thermodynamics. Everything goes from a state of order to disorder, and it is gradually breaking down. And theologically, we say that happened at the curse, that the world was created perfect, and humans were created with all the potential for immortal life. The tree of life was right there in the garden. It was one of the ones they could eat from. But they weren't, the one they wanted was that one tree they couldn't. And so, when they do, they know something has gone wrong, and so they hide. And in Genesis 3 it says that God was walking, and he said, Adam, where are you? Because they were accustomed to walking together, and Adam missed the appointment. And I guess after a while, Adam said he's going to find out anyway. So he said, we're over here, something like that. Why are you hiding? We were afraid. We did the one thing you asked us not to do. We were afraid to face you. The beginning of shame. And he said, we realized we're naked. God says, how did you figure that out? It just came to us. We knew something had changed. We were now self-conscious. We were now aware of our flaws. And God says, well, here's what's going to happen. First, there was a curse he pronounced on the serpent. And he said, there will be enmity and war between your descendant and the seed of the woman, the descendant of the woman. And eventually, you're going to bite him on the heel, but her descendant is going to smash your little skull. I'm paraphrasing. And so, the prophecy, even at the beginning of time, was that the seed of the woman would conquer the seed of the serpent. And then he said, Eve, what have you done? From now on, under this curse, you will have pain in childbirth. And it will be a constant generational reminder of the fallenness of this world. Adam, from now on, you will live under hard labor, under the sweat of your brow with thorns and thistles. Life is going to be uphill from now on. Now you've decided you want to go it alone, you're going to go it alone. And I tell you, until you go back to the ground that you came from, life is going to be hard. That curse started, we can't even put it on the four corners here because it's before Abraham, way back there. That curse has been in the process of being lifted all the way up until the time Messiah came. And Messiah was the great plan to redeem us and to lift the curse started here. And the process has begun, but we're still feeling the effects, aren't we? The universe itself still wearing out, still under a curse. Our wrinkles still coming to our face. The little caps on the end of every DNA molecule that's in our bodies are frayed. They don't reproduce as well as the one that's there. There's a flaw in the system, a fly in the ointment all the way down. We should stop being surprised that the world is fallen. It is fallen. Things like cancer come along, and there's probably not a family in here who has not been touched by cancer. What is going on? The actual cells in our body start to multiply, and the other cells which are supposed to stop that from happening don't do it. And so things just keep replicating that are bad. How does that happen? We should stop being surprised. There's a curse on the world. there's a curse. And so even though, now this is one of the great ironies of the Hebrew way of thinking. What does Psalm 19 say? The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day they pour forth speech and knowledge, saying how great God is. It can be seen in this world. We see God's grandeur, and yet in this world we simultaneously see a brokenness. There's something wrong with everything. Something is cracked at its very foundation. See, something can be beautiful and dying at the same time. If you think about a cancer patient who is fighting valiantly, and in the battles she is lovely, and she's doing what she can while at the time she has to bless her family. And she is in the struggle beautiful, but she is also wearing out. That's what this universe is like. It's beautiful in its struggle. It's wearing out. So when we get to Ecclesiastes, we have a description of what life is like in human relationships in a fallen world where God has been jettisoned off to the side. Chapters 1, 2, and 3 of Ecclesiastes all have God central. Chapter 5 starts out, guard your steps when you go to the house of God. Draw near to worship. Don't offer the sacrifice of fools. So right here, between all those chapters where God is central, we have a chapter with no mention of God. And this particular chapter is telling us how life works when people excise God from the situation. And what do you have left? Well, it's kind of sad. There's oppression. The first couple of verses talk about how those with power abuse those without power. They exploit, they take advantage of. This is the idea that some people have been given privilege and have been given more than they ever deserved, and they don't even realize it. They think they earned all that. What's that old phrase that they used to say about George Bush? He was born on third base and thought he hit a triple, right? So it's the idea that you don't even realize how much favor and privilege you've had in your life. It's not an equal playing field, and those that are under the yoke of oppression, who fight against, or whose lives are a constant battle against certain kinds of discrimination and obstacles, we don't even realize that. Now, if you talk to us white men and you say, you are in a position of privilege and power, we don't feel that. You know why? Because life is hard for us too. And so it's hard to get a feeling for how much harder it is for other people. If you're a minority, life has more obstacles in certain ways. If you're a woman, life has more obstacles in certain ways. Don't act like you don't know what I'm talking about. If you're a minority woman, you have doubled up obstacles to getting certain things done. It's just how the world works in a totally human system. Those with power hang on to it, and they try to get things from those who don't have power. And Ecclesiastes says, let's stop being surprised by this. You think there's no solution. He just says there's no one to even comfort them. They're in an unfair, the game field is not equal, and they're in an uphill battle, and there's nothing that can be done about it. Wow. That's a human system. And then there's another section, verse 4. I have seen every labor and every skill which is done is a result of rivalry between a person and his neighbor. You take God out of the situation, the only thing we have left is competing and trying to survive against the others who are also trying to survive. It's the rat race. It's dog eat dog. You got to outperform, outwin, outsurvive the others. Rivalry, comparison, rivalry. This is a human system. And it's exhausting trying to always stay ahead. Afraid that AI is going to take your job. Or if it's not AI, it's the next generation of kids. Whoever it is, there's always a fear of competition against, rivalry against other people. We compete, even within families. Siblings compete with siblings. Spouses compete with spouses. Neighbors compete with neighbors. Co-workers compete with co-workers. It's a constant struggle. Why? Because that's all we have left when God is missing. Just rivalry and competition. I think Darwin called it survival of the fittest. So those who are better equipped to survive relish that, and those who can't, sorry. That's just how the world works. I lost my... Every time I wave the Bible around, I lose my place. Okay, then the next section. Verse 7, I looked again at futility under the sun. There was a man without a dependent, having neither son nor brother. There was no end to all his labor. His eyes were never satisfied with riches, and he never even asked, for whom do I labor and deprive myself of pleasure? You know what? Without God in your system, all you have is competition, oppression, competition, and then this. What's this? We work and work and work and work. Workaholism. Workaholism is an interesting thing. You can preach against it all day long, and everybody assumes you're always talking about somebody else. Well, whoever those workaholics are, I hope they're listening, right? Does it ever occur to you, oh, you're talking to me? Working, working, working. Can't rest, can't stop. He never even asks himself, why am I doing it? It's never self-reflective. Never says, what am I motivated by? Why am I working so hard? You got to stay ahead. Just put your head down and keep going. Just work, work, work. And then the last section there, verse 13 on, talks about two kinds of leaders, a poor yet wise youth, and then there's an old king, the foolish old king who no longer knows how to receive instruction. By the way, do you know how when you're old, you know what defines when you're old? When you no longer know how to receive instruction. You can be old at 25 because you have decided you don't need any more instruction. You can be old at 55 because you have decided I do not need any more instruction. Or you can be old at 90 and say, I've decided I don't need any more instruction. Two kinds of leaders. The young leader comes along and replaces the old guy. Verse 15, I've seen those living under the sun move to the side of the second youth who replaces him. So, the old is out, the new is in. The old leader has been displaced, and now there's a new hot leader. We got the new cool, attachment to this new personality. And how long does that last? About 10 minutes. You want to be a celebrity? You want to be famous? I did. You know how long that lasts? About 10 minutes. But without God in the system, what else is there? You've got oppression. You've got competition. You've got workaholism. And you've got 10 minutes of fame. And then you're forgotten. Your name is forgotten. So the writer, the teacher here is saying, is that all we want? Do we want to do that? Is that what we want to live for, those things? No. Somebody asked C.S. Lewis once, how do I become a good writer? I want to be a writer. And kind of like you, C.S. Lewis, how do you become a writer? And you know what his answer was? You don't become a writer. You fall in love with something that makes you want to write. In other words, you don't start with writing as the big thing. You start with something that is so compelling, has captured your attention so much that you have to write well to describe what it is. If you start with writing as the goal, you don't have anything except writing to write about. You'd be like a photographer that all you do is take pictures of cameras. Okay? I'm a photographer. I just take really good pictures of cameras. Oh, I also take pictures of people taking pictures. That's all I do. Well, photography, it has to be about something other than photography. A photographer needs a subject that is so beautiful or so inspiring that you want to take a good picture because of the thing, not because of photography. Okay, you with me? This is true of writing. This is true of photography. It's true of cooking. You say, I want to be a great chef. Okay, what's the most amazing taste you've ever had? I don't know yet. I'll find that out when I'm a great chef. No, that's not how it works. You have to fall in love with the flavor so amazing that you say, I have to learn how to cook so that people can taste this. Cooking itself is not high enough along the line to be worthy of that. It's the thing itself. So when you talk about teaching, leading, When I was a young man, I wanted to be a great teacher and a great leader. And I wanted to be able to be a great speaker. I took all the training I could get in those areas I took. But you know what? You can't speak about speaking. It's not a big enough subject. You can't lead about leadership. Can you imagine a leader going, all right, I figured it out. I'm going to take us all to leadership land. No, it doesn't work that way. You have to have some place that's so compelling that you need to take people there, and then you figure out what leadership is because of the thing, not because of leadership. So I think when you excise God from the situation, then you're left with just photography, just cooking, just writing, just speaking, just teaching. Those things aren't big enough. Now, it took me decades to figure this out. And I think when I move out of middle age toward older man age, whatever that is, I remember when we were starting this church 22 years ago, we had designated groups to meet before church, and one of them we thought we'd call the seniors group. That was for people my age now. And they were like, we're not seniors. I'm like, well, I mean, you're almost 70. I mean, isn't that like senior? No, we're not the seniors who like sit around and talk about health problems all day. We're like the active seniors. Okay, all right, okay. Anyway, as you grow older, you get more perspective on things. And I think that I thought that speaking and teaching and leading were the highest things. But now I see, if I'm not in love with God in a way that makes me want to bring others there, then speaking and leading are not enough. They can't handle it. They're not made for that. But once you find the thing, the person, the place, the being, then that makes you want to go back and use teaching and use speaking and use cooking and use photography and use gardening. You want to use these things to further the cause of the thing. It's not a cause in and of itself. And how beautiful it is when you forget about preaching and you just talk about God. Isn't that better? And what a beautiful it is when you forget about being a great painter and you're just moved by the light on the canyon wall in a way that makes a tear come to your eye. And you say, I want to try to capture that. I want to try to capture that for other people. You've forgotten about being a great painter. You're now moved by the thing itself. The thing itself. Now, there are some hints in this chapter, though they're kind of like hidden in there. There's some hints about a different way. And I want to read just 2 more verses and then we'll be done. Verse 5 says, the fool folds his hands and consumes his old flesh. In other words, he's saying, yeah, I know the proverb that says, if you're lazy, you're going to consume your own flesh. Like, it won't go well from you if you're lazy. He's like, I know that that's true. But then the bigger thing is, one handful of rest is better than 2 fistfuls of labor and striving after the wind. What's the hint? Off the rat race, off the competition place, off the survival of the fittest, there's another place. It's a place of rest. You can sense this in your body when you have a truly restful time, day off, where you're not even, sometimes you work hard to have a good day off. That's not a good day off. When you're actually resting. If you can't ever stop working, God built that Sabbath principle into us. He knows how he wrote the user's manual on us. And he says, according to the user's manual, we work better if we have 1 day of dedicated rest where we're not productive. That's how you're going to be the most productive, is to stop being so productive. And then this also, rest transfers not only into behavior and action, but into the attitude of the heart. You know why? If your heart can't rest, you're always in that, what do I have to prove? What do I have to prove? What do I have to do? What am I afraid of? Got to keep moving, got to keep moving, got to keep working. Got to keep showing that I'm good enough, righteous enough. Got to keep doing good works to prove all this stuff. And so even though your body might be sitting still, your heart is still working all the time. Got to work, got to work, got to work. And Hebrews 4:9 says, there is still a Sabbath rest for the people of God. He's not talking about not boiling water on the Sabbath. He's talking about our hearts being at rest, knowing that our sins have been covered, have been taken care of, and there's a rest that comes. And it says it's still possible to enter into a true Sabbath rest of the heart. Rest. This is out of the rat race. It's part of God's design. And the second clue we get is verse 9. Nate and Sarah, 2 were better than 1. They have a good return for their labor. For if one of them falls, the other will lift up his companion, but woe is the one who falls when there is not another to lift him up. Furthermore, if 2 lie down together, they keep warm. But how can one be warm alone? And if one can overpower him who is alone, 2 can resist him. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly torn apart. What's the hint? In converse to the competition and rat race and workaholism, there's rest and community. So you start working with people. You start prioritizing relationships and community over productivity. And this is a hard one for me because productivity is like that's how I, prove my value is I'm productive. If I'm not productive, I don't feel valuable. I don't feel like, So for me, this is a risk to say more relationship, less productivity. This is God's way. This is the way of rest. This is the way of community. No one, God does not consider endless productivity a virtue. Have we learned to rest, body and soul? Have we learned to value the 3 and the 2 more than working alone in isolation? You've heard the phrase, if you want something done right. It's kind of true. Because when you start working with others, at least over the short haul, it can be messy. Things maybe not as efficient. Maybe it would have been faster to do it yourself the one time. I remember when Kyle was young and I was trying to challenge him to do yard work with me, which he never wanted to do. And I thought to myself, if the time I spent trying to convince him to do yard work, if I just did the yard work in that same amount of time, I'd be done. But you know what? I never poured into him like, here's how it works and here's how you do it. And I don't care how you feel, there's a value in hard work. By the way, Caitlin, that's what I hired your son for a week from Monday, and that's what I'm going to be saying to him. There is a time for hard work. There's a time for hard work. But there's a time for rest. How do you rest? Body and soul. Body and soul rest. That's God's way. And the peace that comes over you when you no longer have to prove you're the best, or not even the best, just prove that you're good. That's a gift that comes back to you that you can't quite understand when you first start. It's like you think you're giving up everything. You don't even realize what is there to be gained. Somebody said it this way. Instead of working your way up the ladder, just get off the ladder and start helping other people up the ladder. And you say to people, what do you need that I have that can help you do your job? And instead of trying to beat them to the top, you actually flip that and you try to help people get to where they want to go. It's like the opposite of human nature. It's called servant leadership, but most people think servant leadership is just being a nice guy. It's not just being a nice guy. It means you've stopped trying to advance yourself, and what's even more important is that you help others move ahead and grow. I think that's kind of a job description of a pastor. I was with Nick in the hospital this week, and I kind of hated to leave him because he was just had to stay there for overnight and a while just alone, you know, and you can't have visitors all the time. And but so I got home and I texted him and said, you know, how are you feeling? Are you bored to tears? He said, no, I've got a really good meal. They just brought me a really good meal. I just talked to Em for a while. I'm able to rest, and I have Andy Griffith on the TV. And I said, that sounds like Ecclesiastes. Enjoy life with the woman you love in the time that you have as a gift from God. And there's Nick in the hospital waiting to get a stress test the next day. And he's thinking, I have all I need right here in this place. So simple. Invite you to come to the table today. You don't have to be a member. Followers of Christ are welcome to the table, the place of Sabbath rest for our souls. Don't have to prove you're worthy of love. You just are. Don't have to prove you're good enough. You've been forgiven.